cold rain hammered the pavement the night a 5-year-old girl knocked on the door of one of the most feared biker clubhouses in the state. And what happened in the next 12 hours would ignite the internet, terrify a criminal network, and force one hardened biker to make the most dangerous promise of his life. The Iron Vultures weren't the kind of men people visited politely. Their building sat at the edge of Riverton's industrial district like a warning, its steel doors scarred, its windows dark, and its reputation enough to keep most folks on the other side of the highway. Inside, engines cooled, cards slapped against the table, and low laughter filled the smoky air, until 3 soft knocks cut through the noise. Not pounding, not desperate banging, just 3 small, careful knocks. Conversations died mid-sentence. Chairs scraped. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward the door as if the building itself had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe. When the door finally creaked open, the last thing anyone expected was a child. She stood barefoot in the rain, curls plastered to her face, soaked through to the sleeves of her thin pink jacket, clutching a worn teddy bear like it was the only thing holding her upright. She couldn't have been more than 5. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the club president, Marcus Grave Ryder, set his cards down very slowly. Grave was not a man easily surprised. At 6'3", broad-shouldered, and built like someone who had learned early that kindness didn't keep you alive, he had spent most of his adult life making sure nothing caught him off guard. But this wasn't on any list he'd ever prepared for. He crossed the room in heavy steps, boots echoing against the floor, and crouched until he was eye level with the girl. Up close, he could see the tremble in her lip, the mud on her knees, the way her small fingers squeezed the teddy bear so tightly the stuffing bulged at the seams. His voice, when it came out, was softer than anyone in the room had ever heard it. "Hey there, kid, you lost?" The girl shook her head, rainwater flicking from her curls. Her eyes were wide but determined, the kind of brave that only showed up when someone was too young to understand how scared they should be. She swallowed hard and said the sentence that would later rack up millions of views online. "Please, will you marry my mom?" The room went dead silent. Someone in the back actually choked on his drink. Grave blinked once, slow and stunned, like his brain needed a second to catch up with his ears. Behind him, his enforcer muttered, "What the hell?" But Grave lifted a hand slightly, not taking his eyes off the child. "That's quite a question," he said gently. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily," she whispered. "Lily Carter." Her voice wobbled on the last word, and for the first time, Grave noticed the faint redness around her eyes. The look of a kid who had already done too much crying tonight. Something tight pulled in his chest. He pushed it down. "Okay, Lily," he said carefully. "Why do you want me to marry your mom?" Lily's fingers twisted into the teddy bear's ear. Her lower lip quivered. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "Because the bad man took her." The air in the clubhouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. Chairs stopped creaking. Even the old ceiling fan sounded too loud. Grave's jaw flexed once. Slowly. Controlled. "Tell me what you mean by bad men." Lily sniffed hard, trying very hard to be brave. "They came in a black van," she said. "Mommy told me to hide in the closet if anything scary happened. She said if she didn't come back, I should find someone strong." Her eyes lifted and locked onto Grave's face with absolute, heartbreaking certainty. "So I came here." No one in the Iron Vultures laughed. Not one. Because every man in that room knew the weight of what they were hearing. Grave felt something old and unwelcome stir in his memory. Echoes of shouting, of a door slamming, of being too small to help someone who needed it. He stood slowly, the movement deliberate, controlled, but the tension in his shoulders had sharpened into something dangerous. "Torque," he said without looking back. "Lock the front." His enforcer moved instantly. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind Lily with a final metallic boom. The girl flinched at the sound. Grave noticed. His voice softened again. Hey, you're okay in here." She nodded, but her fingers never loosened from the teddy bear. Across the room, their tech specialist hurried forward, phone in hand, face pale. "Grave, you need to see this." Grave took the phone, and his expression hardened immediately. A dashcam video was blowing up online. The clip showed a tiny barefoot girl walking alone through the storm toward the Iron Vultures clubhouse. Timestamp, 20 minutes ago. Views were climbing by the second. Comments were already spiraling into panic and speculation. Everyone knows she's here now. Graves' eyes lifted slowly toward the dark windows. If the people who took Lily's mother were even halfway competent, they were already watching. He handed the phone back without a word and crouched once more in front of the girl. "Lily," he said gently, "did your mom leave you anything? Anything she told you to give the strong person?" Lily's face brightened slightly through the tears. She lifted the teddy bear with both hands. "Mr. Buttons," she said proudly. Torque frowned. "Boss." Brave held out his hand. Lily hesitated only a second before placing the worn stuffed toy into his palm. It was heavier than it should have been. His eyes narrowed just slightly. Across the room, the tech specialist leaned forward, already understanding. "Yeah," he murmured. "That's not just stuffing." And somewhere far outside, in the wet, dark streets of Rivwharton, a black van engine quietly turned over again. The video had only been online for 18 hours when my phone started vibrating nonstop on the greasy counter of my garage, the screen lighting up with notifications faster than I could swipe them away. And I remember thinking, this is what a landslide feels like before it buries you. I'd gone to bed the night before expecting maybe a few thousand views, maybe some local chatter, maybe the kind of attention that flares up and dies by morning. Instead, when I finally opened the app with my coffee still steaming in my hand, the number hit me like a wrench to the chest. 12.4 million views and climbing. The comments were pouring in by the second, people crying, people tagging friends, people demanding updates about the little girl and her mom, people arguing about who I was and what club patch I wore. My brothers had already seen it, of course. Nothing spreads faster than biker gossip, mixed with internet fuel. By the time I rolled the shop door halfway up, Diesel was already leaning against his bike outside, arms crossed, that slow grin on his face that meant trouble was coming. "Well," he said, nodding toward my buzzing phone. "Looks like you broke the internet, Romeo." I muttered something under my breath and tried to play it off, but the truth was, my chest still felt tight from the moment Lily's small hand had tugged my sleeve the day before, her voice so soft it barely carried over the rumble of engines. "Please marry my mom." I'd heard a lot of things in my life. Threats, dares, drunken confessions at 2 a.m, but nothing had ever landed like that. What the video didn't show, what millions of strangers couldn't possibly feel through a screen, was the way her words had come from somewhere deeper than kid logic. There had been worry in that little voice. Real worry. And now the whole world was watching what I'd do next. By mid-morning, the shop phone rang 3 times from reporters. 2 local stations left voicemails asking for interviews, and someone from a morning show in Chicago somehow got my personal number, which Diesel found absolutely hilarious. But underneath the noise, underneath the jokes and the teasing and the growing media storm, something else was building, something quieter and heavier. Because around noon, my phone buzzed with a message that didn't come from a journalist or a stranger. It came from an unknown number with just 4 words. "This is Lily's mom." I stared at that screen for a long second, longer than I care to admit, before opening the message. She'd seen the video. Of course she had. Apparently half the country had by now. Her text was polite, careful, almost too careful, the kind of message written by someone who'd been burned before and didn't trust attention that came too fast. She thanked me for being kind to her daughter. Said Lily had been talking about the nice biker man nonstop since yesterday. Then came the line that made me sit down slowly on the cracked stool beside my workbench. "I hope this hasn't caused you any trouble." Trouble. I actually let out a short laugh at that, rubbing a hand over my jaw. Trouble wasn't exactly the word for 12 million strangers suddenly invested in your life. But there was something in her tone, not embarrassment exactly, more like protective caution, that told me everything I needed to know about the kind of woman she was. I typed back slower than usual, which Diesel immediately noticed because he was hovering like a nosy vulture. Told her Lily hadn't caused any trouble. Told her the kid had more courage than most adults I knew. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally her reply came through. "She worries about me too much." That one stuck with me. Harder than the viral video. Harder than the headlines already popping up online. Because I'd seen that look in Lily's eyes, the too old kind of worry kids aren't supposed to carry. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of engines, customers, and my brothers giving me endless grief about my sudden internet fame, but my mind kept circling back to that message. By evening, the video had crossed 20 million views, and that's when the real storm started. A major news outlet picked it up. Then another. Someone dug up old photos of our club charity rides. Someone else started a thread debating whether bikers could be good role models, which Diesel read out loud in a dramatic voice until I threatened to throw a socket wrench at him. But the moment everything shifted, the moment I realized this wasn't going to blow over, came just after sunset. I was locking up the garage when a small sedan pulled slowly into the lot, headlights cutting across the pavement. I didn't think much of it at first. We get lost drivers all the time. But the engine caught, the driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out holding the hand of a small girl I recognized instantly. Lily. Even from across the lot, even in the fading light, there was no mistaking that determined little face. My boots felt suddenly heavier as they started moving toward them. Diesel went very quiet behind me, which, if you know Diesel, is how you know something big is about to happen. Lily spotted me first, of course she did. Her face lit up like she'd just found exactly what she came for. And that's when I realized something that would change everything that came next, because viral videos are one thing. But when the people in them show up at your door, smiling like they already trust you, the whole story stops being something you can watch from a distance. It becomes something you have to step into. And I had a feeling, standing there under the buzzing shop lights as Lily waved with both hands, that the world hadn't even seen the shocking part yet. By the time Lily's small hand slipped into mine again under the harsh white glow of the garage lights, the internet had already decided what kind of man I was. Hero, softie, publicity stunt, take your pick. But standing there face to face with the two people at the center of the storm, I realized none of those strangers had the faintest clue what was actually happening. Lily beamed up at me like we were old friends, her grip warm and fearless, while her mom hovered half a step behind her, shoulders tight, eyes alert in that way people get when life has taught them not to expect kindness without strings attached. Up close, she looked younger than I'd expected, but tired in the way single parents often are. Not weak tired, but the kind that comes from carrying too much for too long. "Hi," Lily said brightly, as if showing up unannounced at a biker's garage was the most normal thing in the world. Diesel made a quiet choking sound somewhere behind me, which I ignored. I crouched down slightly, so I wasn't towering over her. "Hey there, kiddo," I said, keeping my voice gentle. "You're causing quite the internet earthquake." She giggled like that was the best news she'd heard all week. Her mom finally stepped forward, offering a small, cautious smile. "I'm sorry for just showing up," she said quickly. I thought maybe it was better to talk in person after everything that's happened." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the nerves underneath. Cameras might love viral moments, but real life doesn't come with background music and clean edits. I straightened slowly, giving her space. "You don't have anything to apologize for," I told her. "Your daughter's got more guts than half the guys I ride with." That earned the smallest flicker of real amusement in her eyes, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased. For a few seconds, the three of us just stood there while the shop hummed quietly around us. Tools clinking in the background, the distant rumble of bikes on the highway, the kind of ordinary sounds that felt weirdly grounding after the digital chaos of the last 24 hours. Then Lily, because subtlety is not a skill most 7-year-olds possess, looked straight up at me and said, loud and clear, "Did you think about it?" Diesel lost the battle and let out a full snort behind me. I dragged a hand down my face, half laughing despite myself. "Kid," I said carefully, "you don't waste time, do you?" She shook her head with absolute confidence. Her mom's face turned a shade pinker. "Lily," she murmured, mortified, but the girl just squeezed my hand tighter. And that's when I saw it again, that flicker of worry behind her bright expression. Not matchmaking mischief. Concern. Real, protective concern for her mom. Something in my chest shifted. I stood up fully and glanced toward Diesel and the couple of brothers who had quietly gathered near the open bay door pretending not to use drop. They all suddenly found the ceiling extremely fascinating. Traitors. I looked back at Lily's mom. "How about this?" I said slowly. "Why don't we start with something a little less dramatic than marriage?" Lily's brows pulled together in deep consideration. I pressed on before she could object. "There's a diner 2 blocks over that makes the best milkshakes in the county. We could sit down, talk like normal human beings, and you can tell me what kind of trouble this one's been getting into." I nodded toward Lily. The kid gasped like I'd just offered front row concert tickets. Her mom hesitated. Not long, but long enough that I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Trust isn't free when you've had to earn everything the hard way. Finally, she exhaled softly. Okay, she said. Milkshake sounds safe. Diesel coughed something that sounded suspiciously like famous last words, and I shot him a look that promised violence later. The short walk to the diner felt strangely surreal. A couple of people recognized me from the video and did double takes. One teenager actually whispered, "Yo, that's the biker guy," which Lily clearly heard because she puffed up like a proud little bodyguard. Inside the diner, things got quieter. We slid into a booth, Lily between us, of course, because she was clearly running this operation, and for the first time since the video exploded, we actually talked. Her mom, whose name, I finally learned, was Elena, told me about long shifts, about juggling bills, about Lily's habit of worrying over things kids shouldn't have to think about yet. No dramatic sob story. No fishing for sympathy. Just honest, straightforward life. The kind that hits harder than anything scripted. At one point, Lily leaned across the table, milkshake mustache and all, and announced proudly to her mom, "See? I told you he was nice." Elena looked at me then, really looked, and something in her expression softened in a way that made the whole noisy world outside that booth feel very far away. "You know," she said quietly, "I almost didn't come tonight. The internet can make people seem bigger than they really are." I gave a small shrug. "Trust me," I said. "I'm mostly just a guy who fixes engines and drinks too much bad coffee." Lily grinned like she'd known that all along. But what none of us knew, not me, not Elena, not even fearless little Lily, was that the video was still spreading, still snowballing, still pulling in millions more viewers by the hour. And somewhere out there, far beyond that quiet little diner booth, someone very powerful had just seen it and was about to make a move that would shock even me.